The 2021 NBA trade deadline has come and gone. In this video, we're going to look at the biggest winners and losers from this year's trade deadline. So let's get straight into it. We're going to start with the winners. And in my opinion, the biggest winners in this trade deadline were the Miami Heat. They made loads of moves, especially near the end of the deadline. So let's get into it. They brought in Victor Oladipo, Nemanja Bjelica, and Trevor Ariza was brought in before the deadline. And also, it's not confirmed yet, but LaMarcus Aldridge is pretty likely to go to the Heat. But trade deadline moves, Victor Oladipo and Nemanja Bjelica. They lost Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, Mo Harkless and Chris Silva in this deadline as well. Now the Miami Heat, once again they did very well at trade deadline. Remember last year they got Andre Iguodala near the end, and this year they picked up some good players. Picking up Victor Oladipo for so little it's a steal. He's not back to his best yet this year. You know, he's averaging 21 points per game, 5 boards, and 34% shooting from 3 and 7 threes a game. But Victor Oladipo has always said he wants to join the Heat, and now he's in the Heat. You know, he's on an expiring deal, so he has to play for his next one. I think this is a great move for the Heat. They also brought in Bjelica as well, who's going to hopefully solve their power forward problems after they lost Jay Crowder. This year, Bjelica is averaging 7.2 points per game and 30% shooting from 3. So, you know, I think he'll be a good addition for the power forward position. And also Trevor Ariza, 3-and-D. We haven't seen him play in about a year now, but I think he's a good pickup. So all in all, Pat Riley and the boys, they nailed it again. Unbelievable trade deadline for the Miami Heat, and I expect them to go challenging, you know, in the East now, from now on, with the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets, and maybe in the Bucks as well. And to our second winners now, we got the Denver Nuggets. They brought in Aaron Gordon, Gary Clark and JaVale McGee. They lost Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, Isaiah Hartenstein and some future picks. Denver got their Jeremy Grant replacement in Aaron Gordon. Gordon will be, you know, Jokic's front court partner now, who can guard opposing wing players like LeBron, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. This year Aaron Gordon is averaging 14.6 points per game, 6.6 boards and 38% shooting from 3 on 4.5 threes a game. They also got some more front court depth in JaVale McGee as well, so he'll be Jokic's backup center, who is a very good shot blocker, rim protector and very good locker room presence as well. As a Laker fan myself, I watched JaVale McGee with us last year. Yes, he's got his deficiencies, which makes him, you know, unreliable in certain matchups, but he's a very good player to have in your team, you know. And I would have loved to have him with the Lakers this year, because we need a shot blocking big man. So I think he'll be a great pickup for the Nuggets. And of course Aaron Gordon, you know, we all know what he's about now. Athletic, you know, very good dunker, and he's also, you know, a very good defender as well. So I think that's a very good pickup for the Nuggets, and that's going to help them contest in the West, a very competitive Western Conference this year. On to number 3 now, we got the Chicago Bulls. They brought in Nikola Vucevic and Troy Brown, and they lost Otto Porter Jr., Wendell Carter Jr., Daniel Gafford, Chandler Hutchinson and some future picks. The Bulls are finally moving on from relying on draft picks to hit. You know, these last few years they've been hoping to get a star in the draft, hasn't worked out. So they're finally going for some good pieces that could help them contend in the future. Pairing Zach LaVine, I think bringing in Nikola Vucevic, you know, with Zach LaVine is a great move and a big step in the right direction for the Bulls if you want to contend in future years. Vucevic is averaging 25 points per game, 11.6 boards and 42% shooting from 3 on 6.5 threes a game. He's in his prime now, he's 30 years old, all-star again this year. He's a very good pickup. I rate this guy a lot, very highly. And I think also getting rid of Otto Porter Jr.'s expiring contract and getting players like Nikola Vucevic for him, I think that's a very successful trade deadline for the Bulls. The next step for Chicago though, bring in Lonzo Ball in the off-season. You know, well, at least try anyway. I think the Pelicans could keep hold of him now that they kept him. But if there's a chance to get Lonzo Ball in, make a mini big tree in Chicago. On to our 4 winners now, we got the Dallas Mavericks, who only made one move at the deadline, but I think it's a very effective move. It's bringing in JJ Redick and Nicolo Melli and losing James Johnson, Wes Mundu and a future second round pick. The Dallas Mavericks, they desperately needed shooting at the deadline to replace Seth Curry if they lost him in the off season. And I think who better to bring in than one of the best 3-point shooters of all time in JJ Redick. Now yes, JJ Redick doesn't play defense. He's 36 years old now, so he's near the end of his career. He's also shooting 36.5% from 3, which is a massive drop off from the 45% shooting he shot from 3 last year. So he's regressing, but maybe a change of scenery in Dallas could get the best out of him. And playing with getting Luka some help, some good reliable shooting. I think it's a good move from the Dallas front office, and hopefully JJ Redick will go some way into solving their 3-point shooting problem. On to our fifth winners now. We got the Philadelphia 76ers, another team that only made one move, but I think it's about the moves they didn't make, which I think were good moves not to make. They brought in George Hill and they lost Terrence Ferguson, Vincent Poirier and a future pick. George Hill isn't Kyle Lowry, and he never will be Kyle Lowry, but he's a nice move, a very solid point guard. This year George Hill is averaging 12 points per game on 39% shooting from 3 on 4 threes a game, so he's shooting the ball well, a very reliable point guard. We've seen him in the NBA for a good few years now. What really makes this a good trade deadline now for the Sixers is they kept hold of both Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey. You know, in any deal to get Kyle Lowry, they would have wanted both of those young players, and maybe some picks as well, and also giving up Danny Green. So they're giving up a lot of their depth just for a 35-year-old expiring contract in Kyle Lowry. So I think this is a great move for him, keeping all their young players, bringing in a reliable point guard in George Hill. Yes, they lost a backup centre in Terrence Ferguson, but you got Dwight Howard anyway, and Joel Embiid of course, so I think they'll be fine, and I expect big things in the playoffs from these guys. And now they got a decent point guard to go with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Let's see what they can do. On to number 6 now, another team that made one move, and they made this move right at the end, the Los Angeles Clippers. As a Laker fan, it hurts me to say, they brought in Rajon Rondo and they lost Lou Williams and some future picks. I think they also had some cash in that deal as well, but that's the main parts of the deal. This year Rondo, he's looked pretty poor in the regular season, but he looked very poor in the regular season last year, and as a Laker fan I know just how good playoff Rondo is. He was the Lakers' third star last year. He was unbelievable in the playoffs. He'll bring so much to this Clippers team. He'll be the floor general that they always needed, bringing the ball up the court for Kawhi and Paul George, setting up plays for them. Leadership, veteran experience, he's been there, won championships with Boston and LA. He's been there and done it. Giving up Lou Will, won't be easy for Clippers fans. He's a big part of their franchise. He's done so well for them over the last few years. And they will lose a bit of scoring off the bench. Lou Will, he brings scoring, but he has had a down year this year. So, I think all in all, a good move for the Clippers. And the final winners we have on this list is the Orlando Magic. Now, they got Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., Gary Harris, RJ Hampton and some future picks. They lost Nikola Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, Evan Fournier and Al Aminu. Now the Magic, they've finally given up on their star players that just weren't working out together, like Nikola Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, Evan Fournier. They got some picks in return, and they're building for the future. They're finally looking like they're rebuilding. It's looking like they're going to tank this season, try and get a high draft pick. You've also got a good young player in Wendell Porter Jr. and you've also got Otto Porter Jr., who I thought would be getting bought out, but the rumor as of right now is he won't be getting bought out. So I'd like to see what he does for the Magic in the remainder of the season. But I think this is a very successful trade deadline for the Magic, because I didn't think they give up Vucevic. Gordon as well, I didn't think they give up him either. So it's about time that they cashed in on these guys, got something for them, and allowed them those star players to compete near the end of their careers. Well, Vucevic is in his prime, and Gordon is actually. But in their prime of their careers, let them compete while you guys rebuild. So I think the Magic had a very good trade deadline. Now on to the losers. Now this one, as I like to tell myself, it's hard. This is a really poor deadline, I think, in my opinion. Not a poor deadline in the big picture, but in the small picture, the Lakers failed this deadline. As I said, now in the small picture, they failed. The Lakers, they really wanted Kyle Lowry. They're willing to give up Dennis Schroeder and KCP. Dennis Schroeder is a younger point guard, only 27. KCP, 3-and-D, has been shooting poorly this year, but he's LeBron and the boys know him. He won a championship with them last year. So it's interesting that they're willing to give up both of those players for Kyle Lowry. So that shows that they really wanted him. But they weren't willing to give up Taylor Horton-Tucker. Now I've watched Taylor Horton-Tucker all year this year, and he's typical young player, up and down, good games, bad games. It's what you expect, inconsistent. He's only 20 years old. So I think the Lakers were right not to get Kyle Lowry, but the Lakers really wanted him, because they were willing to give up their starting backcourt for him. So I think it's a failure for them in the small picture, but in the big picture, they can be the real winners here. They can get Andre Drummond in the buyout market, maybe even Avery Bradley, who's been rumoured to getting bought out from the Rockets. So I think if they can get those two boys in, all in all, they're the real winners. But as of right now, they failed at trade deadline. The second losers are the Boston Celtics. They brought in Evan Fournier and Mo Wagner, and they lost 2 seconds and Daniel Tice. Now, I didn't see the Celtics getting out east anyway before the trade deadline, and I don't see them getting out east now the trade deadline is over. And why this makes this a poor trade deadline is the Celtics, they've lost over half of their their 28 million exception that they had from losing Gordon Hayward in the offseason. They spent, I think, 16 million on Evan Fournier. And Fournier is a good player. He's averaging 20 points per game, 3.7 assists per game, on 39% shooting from 3, on 7 threes a game. He's a good ball handler. He'll take some scoring pressure off Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but he's not pushing the Celtics over the top to a championship. Losing Daniel Tice is a good thing, I think. Getting some of that salary off the books, getting a younger centre, Mo Wagner, I think that was a good move for them, but they only have 12 million left of that trade exception. And was it really worth spending over half it on Evan Fournier? I don't think so. I think the Bucks are ahead of them, Heat, Sixers and Nets. So they might even get out of first round. We'll have to wait and see. Number 3 now, we have the Portland Trailblazers. They brought in Norman Powell and they lost Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. This one's more frustration for me because I made a Portland video the day before the deadline because I didn't see much rumours about them. And it's just saying how good Gary Trent is, and they traded him. So anyway, on to Norman Powell. Norman Powell, he's an upgrade offensively, a very good player on the offensive end. We've seen what he can do with the Raptors. He's averaging 20 points per game and 44% shooting from 3 on 6.5 threes a game for the Raptors this season. The Blazers' problem though this year is defense, and Gary Trent has been great this year on both ends of the court, offensively and defensively. The only reason why I think they let Gary Trent walk was because he's becoming a free agent this offseason and they mustn't be able to get a deal done. So that's why they cashed in on him. If that's the case, it's a solid move, getting Norman Powell in. But if there's any chance of keeping Gary Trent, I think, I say give it a go. Gary Trent's gone from strength to strength for these last couple of years. And for our 4th losers now, and that's the Toronto Raptors. They brought in Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood and a second rounder, and they lost Norman Powell and Matt Thomas. The Raptors seem to be clearing space to move Kyle Lowry because they had too much players. They seem to have been all geared up to lose Kyle Lowry. Both the Heat and the Lakers really wanted him. The Heat offered up Duncan Robinson, who is a very good young player, but they wanted Tyler Hero as well. And as I said, the Lakers offered up Schroeder and KCP, but they wanted THT on top of that. So the Raptors might have got a bit greedy, seeing that they could lose Kyle Lowry in the offseason for nothing. But they could get a sign and trade, but they're going to get much less than what they could have got this deadline. So I think it's weird. I don't see them competing in the East this year. I think they'll scrape the playoffs at best. So I don't know why they didn't cash in on Kyle Lowry when they had the chance. But Kyle Lowry, many people say, and he's up there with Vince Carter as the greatest Raptor of all time. So keep him for a few more months, I guess. But I just think they could have done more this trade deadline. And on to our final losers now. The biggest losers, we say the biggest to last, is the Houston Rockets. They brought in DJ Augustine, DJ Wilson, future picks Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk. They lost Victor Oladipo and PJ Tucker. The Rockets chose Victor Oladipo over Jared Allen and Caris LeVert in the James Harden trade. I don't know what they're thinking. Oladipo was playing poorly before during the season with the Pacers, and they went for him over a good young centre in Jared Allen and a good piece to build around in Caris LeVert. And what's even worse is they could have traded James Harden to the Sixers for Ben Simmons. They could have Ben Simmons on the team right now. So this is Houston Rockets very poor. I don't know who their general manager is now, that Darren Morey left, but he's doing a very poor job at the moment, giving their new head coach no chance of succeeding. They lost Victor Oladipo for practically nothing. Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley, has been rumoured to be bought out. And the Rockets wanted a young player from Victor Oladipo or PJ Tucker. That's what they're saying before they traded him. And what did they end up with? They ended up with Kelly Olynyk. So I think that says it all, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new, and turn on notifications because we got 3 videos out a week, so stay notified. And all I'll say, guys, I'm out of here.